Good morning. Having had this month or so to reflect on change has led me down some interesting paths of reflection and contemplation, and probably led to some questions that will stay with me forever. I have discovered that I've been exploring the concept of change for many years. While moving, I found a short bibliography on the topic of change and transformation from my undergraduate work at the community college. I found an early sermon from an internship time on change. And I also came along a week-long seminar that I presented at Ferry Beach Camp and Conference Center in August of 1998. And though much of that seminar was focusing on transformation of the institutions, specifically the UUA, into becoming an authentically anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural institution, I was reminded of how repeatedly I've been fascinated with the process of change, transformation, and collective liberation that is possible when change occurs. I have this ongoing and funny tension of being an institutionalist prone to honoring traditions and a rabble-rouser, troublemaker, visionary, all wrapped up into this person named Susan, who's a mother, a grandmother, a partner, a minister, a social creature, a chaplain, a strategist, a prophet, and a pastor. And holding all this together can become quite intense sometimes, not just for me and my psyche, but for those close to me when I unload on them when I am struggling with change. What it is, what it isn't. Anyway, I want to share some learnings with you as we continue to unpack that concept of change. Change, as I think we've all come to agree, is a process. Max Dupree, an author, wrote, "In the end, it is important to remember that we cannot become what we need to be by remaining what we are." I like that quote. We cannot become what we need to be by remaining what we are. And this quote too by George Trussell, who's an organizational development person. People, he said, do not basically resist change. They resist being changed. Resist being changed, oh yes. But being changed is a positive, a spiritual goal, a step. And today I want to look a bit as change as that goal. And to achieve a goal, there has to be a strategy and a vision of what it might look like. A strategy, that's the steps, the pathways, the plans to lead one toward a vision. But a strategy for change is only as good as the spirit it stirs, the heart it warms, the passion it awakens, the justice it serves, and the pulse it quickens. A vision, that's a spirit-filled, heart-filled, pulse-racing, audacious goal. As we, South Church, begin to wrestle with change into an institution that shares leadership in new ways, honors and envisions a more just, equitable, anti-oppressive way of functioning and being part of a world that we can only imagine. My question is, how can we do this when it is a figment of our imaginations? How do we set a goal when it's something that we can only imagine? How do we change something if we don't know what it's going to look like, function like, be like? And how do we change what is for something that has not yet existed? I have to suggest it's through a lot of talking and sharing, learning from one another, experimentation, and most of all, being fluid and being responsive. Religious institutions are perhaps amongst the hardest of all institutions to change. Huston Smith, the author of the book The World's Religions, which, as an aside, used to be titled The Religions of Man, see, things can change, wrote, and I paraphrase, "Religion is always conservative and occasionally can be prophetic and transformative." I deeply appreciate this sentiment. Institutions, by their very nature, exist to contain, to serve, to direct, to preserve, to sustain. They are the bastion against chaos, against the dizziness, the whirlwind, the tsunami of feelings and uncertainty that accompanies change. You know, Jonathan asked the most intriguing question during his opening words when he asked about historical relationships as predetermining, guiding forces for change. And that kind of leads me to say, you know, whatever institutions need to remain, to offer some foundation, some assurance, and what of institutions need to be done away with to bring about authentic change? What can we trust for the future, coupled with what we once knew? Thanks, Jonathan. That's great fodder for my mind. And there is part of me that knows through personal experience that transformation and change is a soul-shaking opportunity. It is allowing room for newness, a place of possibility, of creativity, of a new trajectory, which is a prophetic and transformative potential. Can institutions do that? I really don't know. I have this wonderment. What happens first? Does the system and the institution change, and then the individuals be changed within by the way that the institution has changed? Or is it the other way around? The individuals change, and then they bring in that change, the strategies, their goals, their vision into the institution, and then that institution is changed as individuals bring in and are drawn in by a new energy. Probably it's a little bit of both. That is the way most often, isn't it? A little of both. We change, institutions change, institutions change us, and we change institutions. We do know that statistically speaking, though, an institution needs a tipping point before any change can be materialized. So in spite of a few individuals or an individual desiring a change and working toward a change, these individuals must find allies, supporters, persons with the willingness to advance new thinking before trying to lead a place through sheer power plays. Even though those change agents hold the most noble, brilliant of ideas, nothing makes an institution change without a cohort of people working together. Community of communities is vital. And there is a fine line in institutions that require a dance of forward, backwards, sideways, settle, restabilize before moving again. I sometimes picture change like a big lifeboat with people climbing in and out and shifting to make room for others, moving aside to let new people paddle ahead, being shoulders, laps for people to stabilize on and stand on, and sometimes just giving assistance to someone to get out and move off the life raft for a time to rest. I do think, though, that one of the necessary steps toward institutional change is setting a space. I'm not going to use the word safe space. That's far too cliche and most often unrealized and limiting. But activists have begun calling it a brave space. I like that. Brave space where ideas, visions, perspectives can be expressed. A space where we can request time to learn how to be creative or practice curiosity, or where we can request time to refocus, get new information, gain new experiences, ask for others' perspectives, or learn how to rest when pushing is no longer effective, and learn how to gently prod and push when necessary. And also we need to learn to change, and transformation is not always efficiency. It's not always purpose-driven, but change is a full-on heart-spirit engagement with life. It's a spiritual practice, a spiritual goal, as I said at the beginning. And change that does not provide space to honor the spiritual gifts, struggles, and learning will not be sustainable. But that change is not always efficient. And for purpose-driven persons, it can be a little unnerving. And for those of us who lean toward traditional and institutional history and sometimes the desire for clarity and resolution, it can be unnerving. If your MO is to act from a place of effectiveness and is a conclusion-based and process-driven focus, the goal of working toward change of the type I think we really truly need to be bringing about and assure collective liberation, that's challenging, and that's why we need one another. And to make matters even more complicated, sometimes institutional changes may be so uncomfortable as to drive others away. I was reminded of this when I thought about the 4 different owners of the alcohol drug hospital that I worked at. I began under the first owner who truly functioned from her heart, her own experiences with addiction, compassion for the addict and all those who suffered along with them. She was a wonderful role model, and I'm ever so grateful that I learned all that I did from her. But when she sold to another owner, it was time, and it was needed. And the second owner had a more business-focused model. This preserved and saved the institution and met all the new standards that the state was putting in about recovery and insurance reimbursement. They were kind and gentle, but lacked a core understanding of the process and the people and lost the spirit to continue. And the third owner appeared to grasp what was needed to establish an environment that nurtured, treated, and allowed for mind, body, spirit transformation that is crucial to recover from addictions. They were so overwhelmed with how slow and challenging recovery was that they got soul sick and they sold. They had loved an addict and thought if they owned the place, they could save the addicts. And the fourth owner thought they had it all. They thought because they were without drink for a period of time that they knew what they need. They thought they had the social capital to play the politics needed to maintain the small hospital. They thought that they could use their privilege to get what they wanted from the community, the staff, the patients. And in the meantime, the heart and soul went out of the place till 1 by 1 and 2 by 2 we quit or were fired. And it was then that I made the decision to enter seminary to prepare for ministry. I could have found another job in the field of addictions. I was known, had a good reputation. I was good at what I did. But instead, I took the opportunity to change careers. It was a now or never moment. I don't regret it at all. Waiting and gaining all the life experiences I have has suited me well. But that is not to say it was not without major life change. A change that came about because of the institution that I was attached to, that was sapping my life away. And when I was finally free, I could step back and get healthy enough to go in another way. Now, did I have a vision of myself as minister? I had a slight blurry perspective from childhood, but I had no adult plan. But I was willing to live with the ambiguity enough to begin the process. And Ron, who, though totally unprepared for that new journey, has accompanied me, and he has his own story of change and transformation. Beginning the process is part of what I am thinking about with change, and there are some traits that are needed. Fluidity, curiosity, resiliency, were ones that I depended on. And then as I entered the process of change, I relied on flexibility and relationships and community of communities to support and sustain me. And now that I am in ministry, and especially here with you as we explore novel changes, I rely on relationships, consensus, sharing experiences, shared wisdom, and accountability to help me navigate toward a goal as we travel toward a goal of building and bringing South Church into its fullest potential as a Unitarian Universalist congregation that lives its values, its principles, the spirit and love. Collective liberation, the goal of being in full harmony with the universe. I hope you join me as we explore this goal. May it be so.